Hanover County is about 30 minutes out of Richmond. These brothers are dear friends, but also folks who are serving in a community that actually recently um, had some KKK involvement, recently got arrested, right? And so, I mean, oftentimes we talk about race in the urban context and issues of justice in the urban context, but there's a lot of work and discipleship needed in these rural contexts, right? And so I'll let each person like introduce themselves. But we got Josh, Hayden, Randell, Williams, and Jon Gibson. And so I'll have you kind of talk a little bit about each of your contexts, and we'll get started with this conversation.
Well, I'm Randell Williams. I'm the pastor of Shiloh Baptist Church, a predominantly African American church, 154 years old. Started out as the Freedmen's Colored Church, and eventually moved from our cemetery to our present location. That was built in 1876, I believe. So we've been here in this area. We've had one or two splits from us over those years that have ballooned into local churches, but we've been here 154 years.
And what about you, John? Where are you from, bro? And what church are you pastoring?
Yeah, so I'm pastoring a church called The Branch. We're a plant that came out of another local church, or was sent out of another local church. We started back in September, so celebrated our 6-month anniversary by going virtual for the first time. So, my heart is for diversity, but right now we're pretty homogenous.
Yeah, man. It's just wow, man. We go from 154-year-old to 6-month-year-old, from a grandmother to a newborn. Josh, tell me about you and your context, brother.
So I'm serving I'm the lead pastor of First Baptist Church in Ashland. Our church is 162 years old, and we are historically a predominantly white church. That's began kind of in the center of town. We're actually at our second campus, just on the outskirts of the town limits of the town of Ashland. And I've been there for just over 5 years. Which is just a little blip on the radar of 162 years, but learned a lot, and it's been a joy to serve there.
It's great, man. It's great. So, we're going to spend some time talking about kind of race and, justice and engaging in the community. And we're just going to start the conversation. There's going to be some people ask the question, why have this conversation, and what is your hope for your community?
Josh has been here in the Ashland community a little bit longer than I have, but the desire, I believe, is still the same for me, and that's really to help bridge a lot of the gaps that seem to be prevalent in our community, that I believe many people have or had previously to the situation now. I believe they grew deaf or oblivious to, that were really here, and not recognizing that this is their neighbor. So it's a desire of mine kind of to help with that.
Yeah, and bringing the communities together. I think that's Sunday morning is such a segregated hour, right? And so having the chance to say this needs to be different. How do we do things differently than have been done for 160 years and more, and finding ways that we can step into that and break down that barrier?
There's kind of two really significant components. One has to do with justice, and the other has to do with the mission of God. And justice for me has a lot to do with the restoration of the world to the way God always intended for things to be in relationships. But core to this is we're seeing young people and people in general, what it means to be church is sort of falling out of favor in the community at large. And that's happening clearly in urban context, but it's definitely happening in rural context too, where normally like the generational faith that would be passed down from grandparents to parents to grandchildren, there's starting to be missing generations within the church. And one of the things that I've recognized that's important is because young people have a lower threshold of tolerance for an unwillingness to engage in conversations around race and justice. And so part of it for me is like, my hope is that our community will begin to more deeply engage in the mission of God for our neighbors, and especially for those younger generations that are missing in many of our churches, especially older historic churches like the ones that Randell and I serve in. Like we recognize that some of our young people are much more prone to be a part of a faith community that is engaging in conversations about race and what it means to be good neighbors together.
I think issues of ethics, like young people are not following Jesus and rejecting Jesus for questions of knowledge or epistemology. It really tends to be about ethics. How do Christians engage and care about what's going on in the world, particularly in areas of race, class, culture, all that kind of stuff. So, like, how did y'all get connected? Like, what's kind of origin story of y'all's relationship, both personally and with y'all's churches?
Well, I reached out to Josh, and the story goes, I called Josh multiple times. It had to have been about 3 or 4 times after I got to Ashland. And I think we finally met at a Suzanne's or something like that. I think we met
Starbucks.
Yes. We met at Starbucks. That was kind of the meeting place for me at the time. And it was cool because I was just starting to get a lot of points built up for my Starbucks card. So for me, it was like perfect. But we met there. We talked about different things, and we just kind of slowly but surely built up a friendship. It still surrounded a lot of what we wanted to do in the community. And so that was how we started. And then our relationship just grew over the years as we became closer and really had a heart to work together to do work in our community. John, I met through Josh, and it was one of those things that we were all at one place at one time, and we met, and I mean, we just connected. It was literally like John was a kindred spirit, because John is just as crazy as I am. But my level of craziness hasn't reached his peak of craziness of what he can be. And but we both had a heart for doing work in the community and reaching people. And so it grew from there. And out of there, we were able to be a location where he could start the work for the branch. And I'll be honest with you, it was one of those labors of love. I was just grateful to God that we were able to aid in that. To this day, like, that is a part of our church's history. That's a part of his history. But it is also a part of our community's history, that these two churches could actually coexist together.
And work together.
Despite racial lines. And I did my best to make it clear to my people here that this was a part of our contribution to our community, our contribution to help a neighboring church, because I really had to let them know, if we were in the same situation they were in, wouldn't we want someone to open the door for us? And so it really boils down to, how can you love God who you've never seen and hate or despise or won't even help your brother who you see every day? So once they got the gist of that, the problems I had were very minimal. That, it was more or less like, these chairs was here, Why the air's on too much, just random stuff like that. But it was really a labor of love that I am grateful that John gave us the opportunity to do that. So that's how I met all of them.
Yeah.
That way.
Well, and I was thinking about it too, Randell. I don't know. All I remember was hanging out in your office one day. Like, we were just talking. We weren't, there were no plans in place necessarily that the branch was going to start there. I think I was probably crying on your shoulder, telling you about all the places that I kept, finding.
Getting told no.
No. Yeah. Josh was gracious enough to let us start a Bible study back in fall of 2018, I guess, or late fall of 2018. So that kind of connected us. And then Randell, both of you guys were just so open-handed with everything. And Randell threw it out there to me and said, hey, what you guys could probably meet here. And I think at first I probably was like, you're crazy, but then the more I talked about it, the more I was like, man, he's not as crazy as I thought he was. Like, there's something here. Yeah, you're right, Randell. That's part of our story. And, one of the things that I said to our community was, listen, like, even once we find another place, which God led us to, this isn't over. Like, this is something it's still going, and we're not going to just say, hey, thanks for the space, we're out of here.
I think in order to do any kind of collaboration well, particularly in the community, you have to practice generosity, and it can't just be about you. And I think that's something that we struggle with as human beings. Zig Ziglar said it this way: everybody's tuned into the same radio station, WWIFM. What's in it for me? So we gotta.
Part of the heartbeat of all this too, for some of our churches getting together, is that as leaders we've developed friendships with one another. Randell and I, we were both like new young pastors in kind of an older town with these established churches that hadn't really done a lot of collaboration together. Or if it had been, definitely our churches had never collaborated together. And so as we enjoy just doing normal things that friends would do, both talking about the joys and hardships of our work, but also just about our families and our lives. And then going through some hard things together. Really one of the deep ways that our churches got connected was through a Calvin Worship Grant, the Vital Worship Grant, where it facilitated an opportunity for us to develop friendships and really connect worship to everyday life and bridge racial divides. And so we've been writing devotionals together, and our churches have been intentionally meeting together over the last year, which has really helped us to go beyond Randell and I's friendship, where our churches can actually get to know each other and be invested in the relational work together. So that's been something that's been a real important thing for our churches and our own friendships.
That's good, man. That's really good.
I still owe my devotion, by the way. Don't be mad. I got to get them to you this week. It's been a lot.
That's fine. That's good, man. Well, I'm glad. I'm looking forward to dig in a little bit of what is justice, how does proximity and presence inform the way we practice justice.